I'm going to give you the reasons behind so many people feeling indifferent about Trevor Lawrence. We're going to try to settle this once and for all on today's episode of Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listen. A quick reminder, we're free to subscribe to on our YouTube page. Make sure you go to YouTube and go to Locked On Jaguars, go to that page, hit the subscribe button. Also, hit the like button and then hit the bell so you receive notifications each and every time we drop an episode. And if you listen to podcasts while you're driving around or at your desk at work, wherever you do that at, make sure you tap in every day so you don't miss an episode. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Shout out to the everydayers also for tuning in every day. You can be an everyday if you tune in every day also. What's up, y'all? Having a good time here today. I'm telling you what we're going to do. We're going to take this Trevor Lawrence debate head on, and we're going to take our emotions out of it. We're going to point to some of the good things that have been said by some people and then some negative things that have been said by other people. I'm going to tell you why I believe folks are so different or indifferent when it comes to talking about Trevor Lawrence, who's become a very, very polarizing subject when it comes to whether or not he's elite or not. All right, so that's the Trevor Lawrence debate continues. Second segment, facts over feelings. We're going to actually point things out that people always talk about are so important, but then they seem to leave that out when they talk about Trevor. And then what CJ Stroud got to do with all of this, right? You know, haters love to have an audience and they love to have people that tag along with them, right? And not saying that CJ Stroud is that, but I will tell you this. His emergence has, let's just say, it's fueled a little bit of those people that I believe who were already looking for something bad to say about Trevor Lawrence. So let's just get to the top and let's not bury it. We'll go ahead and get right to it. Is Trevor Lawrence elite? What makes a quarterback elite? Talent, arm talent, the ability to throw several throws and make throws that only a handful of people can make. Let me look up the definition of elite, right? So I know what it means, like in my view, but I'm going to tell you what it means. Definitely, right? Elite, a select group that is superior in terms of ability or qualities to the rest of the group or society. Okay, that's the first definition that comes up when you think about elite. Now, does that mean that we're going to compare him to Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Eli Manning? Or are we going to compare him to the quarterbacks that are in the league now? They say the GOAT's playing right now, right? So Patrick Mahomes. Is Patrick Mahomes the standard? I would say yes, he is. He's won championships. He has elite talent, the ability to throw the ball in places and in ways that people haven't seen. He has the calm, the cool nature about it. He's level-headed, but he also plays beyond the X's and O's, and he does a lot of things. I like to compare Patrick Mahomes to Steph Curry. He does a lot of things that coaches tell you shouldn't have done, but he gets away with it. So they kind of encourage him and let him keep doing it. And they actually build the talent and build a team around him. The reason why I say I compare him to Steph Curry is because Steph Curry shoots the ball from places that coaches tell players all the time not to do. In fact, there are a lot of people that think that Steph has ruined the game, not by anything that he's actually done, but he's ruined the game because now you got a whole bunch of people that think they're good enough to do the things that he does and they're trying to do them. Jordan Poole, but they're not good enough to do it and they shouldn't be doing it, right? But I will tell you that I believe that Trevor Lawrence does have those elite traits. And that may lead to somebody thinking that I'm just a homer. I'm not. Never have, never will be. Anybody that's listened to my podcast over the years when the Jaguars weren't good, they know that I'll tell the truth the way it is, right? So let me just examine Trevor real quick. Trevor Lawrence makes throws that a handful of quarterbacks can make. And there are people that I remember like he made a throw in training camp, and Ryan Clark, who I really, really like of the Pivot Podcast and ESPN, Ryan said, that ain't nothing special. I saw Patrick Ramsey do that all the time. And Patrick Ramsey did have a very, very good arm. The thing is though, he makes throws, he has a fastball, and he can actually fit that fastball into some small, tight spaces. And he can do it while he's on the run, and he can do it without actually having his feet set. So his talent level, I don't think is a question. I'll be honest with you. I was always one of those people that did say, I don't see Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes arm talent. But that because those two guys probably had the best arm talent of anybody who's ever played the game. I often said I do see Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, arm talent. That's what I saw. I think his arm is probably a little stronger than both of those guys. But that's to me what I saw when I saw Trevor Lawrence. And there were people that say, no, man, he can spin it just like those guys and Josh Allen. And I still to this day don't believe that. I don't think that that's what he is and that's who he is. Like he's just walking around throwing strawberries through locomotives. That's just not who I think. I think he does have a hell of a skill set, right? And there's a reason why you're the number one high school player in the country. And there's a reason why you're the number one college player in the country. And that is because of that skill set. That skill set is super high. You know who else has a real high skill set? Jameis Winston, believe it or not. And he's not a starter. So you can possess that and still not be considered elite because of other things. Now let's look at those other things. Is he a winner? Yes, he is. He won in high school, won in college. He's yet to win in the NFL, but he did in his second year take a team to the second round of playoffs, and they lost to the eventual Super Bowl champion. He's won 8 straight road games in the NFL currently, and he's 15-5 in his last 20 games. And a lot of those things I just mentioned were things that the professionals taught me were the most important things. The ability to win and galvanize the team. I'm going to talk about those. I'm going to try to separate facts from feelings here in segment 2 as we get ready for segment 2 here on Locked On Jaguars, man, because I really do believe that there's just a difference of opinion. And I think everybody's entitled to their opinion and what they see. And I think there's a little bit of confusion because of what I just mentioned about the Patrick Mahomes stuff and the arm talent stuff. And maybe those folks that watch when we have these big national games, and sometimes Trevor doesn't play as well in those games, I think they're using that as a bit of a measuring stick. But I'm going to talk about it. I'm willing to talk about it, and I'm willing to be as transparent as I can about it so everyone will know exactly where I stand. And I think he's an elite quarterback. I'll do that here in just a second on today's episode of Locked On Jaguars. But first, I have to let you know about the Gametime app. That's right, Gametime. Whenever you need tickets, a lot of times we expect at our last minute, we expect that everybody else's, that our lack of planning is everyone else's issue, right? That's their responsibility. Well, you know what? Gametime fully accepts that role, right? You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easiest way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork of buying tickets away. This is some Gametime doesn't care about, giving you a speech about procrastinating, because you know what? They'll do it all for you. All you got to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. I'll repeat, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And we are back here, even though we never left. We are here on Locked On Jaguars, making sure to give you the best show that we can absolutely give you, talking about the topics everyone's talking about. Trevor Lawrence has been in the news a lot, and that's what we're hitting on today. The Trevor debate continues. Is he elite or is he not elite? I kind of outlined it a little bit for you why some people may not think he's elite. I think when there's this natural way or natural thing to get fatigued when something is thrown in your face all the time, right? And Trevor Lawrence was sort of that topic. You know, it could be LeBron, it could be Tim Tebow over the years, it could be whatever the topic is going to be. Daily, people will get fatigued naturally by always having those things put in their face. And Trevor Lawrence was put in people's face a lot, an awful lot. And there are some people that believe he's elite, some people that believe he has elite traits and characteristics, but he hasn't played to an elite level yet. And I think that there's some ground in there that's probably true on both halves. Has he been totally elite in terms of his display as a quarterback? No, not all the time. He has not been. And I think when Richard Sherman gets on Twitter and points those things out, he looks at touchdowns and he looks at this year's stats of touchdowns versus interceptions. I always wonder when they do that, why they just pick this year instead of last year when they're going to do stuff like that. And because you can't make that argument last year. His touchdown to interception ratio was something like, and I'll pull it up here definitively, but I think it was like 26-6. He had 26 touchdowns and like 6 picks last year. No, it's 25-8. How about 25 touchdowns, 8 picks, 4,100 yards, 66% completion percentage. So if you look at just those raw numbers and you go, that's pretty good, right? And you look at his numbers again this year, he has 12 touchdowns with 7 interceptions. And I got to tell you, this is why I say people got to watch games. I think Trevor's had 5 or 6 touchdowns dropped. He should be sitting at 17 or 18 right now. He really, really should. But he's not, right? At this point, last year, he was rolling along, you know what I'm saying? And doing this thing before the Jaguars. This is around the time that the Jaguars got hot with the last 7 games. The team is 8-3 now. I believe they were 3 and what was it? They may have been 4-7. Yeah, they were 4-7. They were 2-7 at one point, and then 4-7 after 11 games last year. So they were behind a lot too, right? And the running game, you know, they only had the one running back with Travis Etienne, and now they have more than that. They're spreading the ball around, and the games have flowed a little bit differently. He's still completing 67% of his passes for 2,700 yards, meaning he's like 1,400 yards away with 7 games to go. That's 200 yards a game, and he'll get back to that 4,000-yard mark. But I think when folks think of an elite quarterback, they're talking about a guy that's throwing for 5,000 yards and 38 touchdowns, right? Like Blake Bortles threw for like 30-some-odd touchdowns and was considered a top 100 player at one point because of the demonstrated performance, but never because of his arm talent. Nobody ever thought Blake had any arm talent like that, right? Even though he was the second or third overall pick. Nobody ever used the word franchise quarterback with Blake. And I think there's a difference between a franchise quarterback and an elite all-time great quarterback, right? There are quarterbacks that don't have certain traits, but they are considered franchise quarterbacks because they can actually lead the franchise. And I think sometimes we get caught up in all of these different monikers and all of these titles and all of these adjectives. And we don't ask, how does the team respond to Trevor Lawrence? How does his teammates, do they believe in him like you would think that a team or a group of players would believe in an elite quarterback? Absolutely. And this is what former players that criticize Trevor, this is what surprises me a little, is that they're not around this team enough. And anybody that is like a former Jaguar player who's around the team enough to actually see how guys respond to Trevor. They're not responding to press clippings. They're not responding to and moving and following a guy because of all the things that were said about him, because in the NFL, that just doesn't happen. They're moving with Trevor Lawrence because they believe in it. They actually believe when Doug Peterson says we got to score on every possession, like last year against the Chargers in the playoffs, those players had to believe that in order to go out and do it. And the only way you believe it is to have belief in your quarterback. And they absolutely do. So by being around the team enough, I know that those guys believe in number 16. That to me is a check on his box as if he's being elite, because you can say you believe in him, but you can really, really act like you believe in him. And those guys look at Trevor and believe in Trevor Lawrence. The fact is you don't win these games. I think they're contributing all the wins to defense and Doug Peterson and Doug Peterson's way of being able to manufacture wins when he was in Philadelphia, always at the end of the season, always close games. They'll tell you in a minute that Jalen Hurts is elite, but Jalen Hurts has done this year exactly what Trevor Lawrence has done. He's just done it a little bit differently. He's done it and they won a couple of games, but he's even struggled some, but folks still consider him elite. So there's a difference between being elite and playing at an elite level. Josh Allen has not played at an elite level, but everyone will say that he's elite. In their losing streak, Patrick Mahomes, when they lost 2 straight games, was not playing at an elite level, but everybody knows that he's elite and they call him the GOAT. But then they want to blame it on the receivers and that he doesn't. He won a Super Bowl last year with his best receiver was a guy who was an afterthought, Smith-Schuster in Pittsburgh. So, other than Travis Kelce, by the way, but I think these words and the feeling that folks are looking for and trying to get out of watching Trevor Lawrence play, they just don't line up with the facts. The fact is that we've all heard from players that talk about the most important stat is a win, right? But then these guys say quarterbacks is winning is a team stat, not a quarterback stat. Something interesting happened this weekend. Well, it started before this weekend. Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion, played the best game he's played as a Jaguar, and all we hear about is CJ Stroud. Jacksonville won. But this goes to show you that when people have, I wouldn't necessarily call it an agenda, but when they have a thought that's on their mind and they don't want to backpedal and they don't want to admit something, they double down on it. And part of them doubling down on it meant that they had to get somebody else on their side that they could point to. And it really saddens me because I do think CJ Stroud is a great quarterback and he's also playing great this year. He's in the MVP race. If they win more games, he's probably an MVP candidate. However, it's almost the same thing. They're going to keep slapping Jaguar fans in the face with that. And at some point, the natural hatred that the Jaguars have for anybody in their division is now going to turn to that kid. And that's almost a sad situation. But it is. So what did CJ Stroud do to get himself into this? Well, I'll tell you about that in just a second in our third segment on Locked On Jaguars. Not before I let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. We're going to answer that question about CJ Stroud and what on earth he has to do with all of this stuff. And we'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars after I let you know about today's sponsors. And this one is FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. You heard me. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better place to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. Now, make sure you use the promo code LOCKEDON at FanDuel.com and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, man, we're rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day, and we always thank you for making us your first listen. We're talking Trevor Lawrence. So far, we've talked about why this debate comes up, why it continues. Facts over feelings. The fact is, the kid statistically has done very well. Um, a little bit better last year with his touchdown to interception ratio. But the touchdown should be higher this year if it weren't for guys having the case of the drops. And then Trevor Lawrence, they haven't had cohesion on their offensive line all year. They're right back in that position this year with no cohesion because you're shuffling starters and you're moving people around. The line has played well the last 2 weeks, I guess, after the challenge that they got off the San Francisco game where they just got mauled, right? So you have to factor all of that stuff in, right? And now most of those folks that, and this is why I know that it's all about feelings and wanting to be right, because the kid had his best game the other day. He had 23 for 36, 364 yards. He had a touchdown running and a touchdown passing. He had one interception that was not his fault. It should have been a penalty on the other team, and everybody readily admits that. But I look up at some shows on Fox Sports 1 or wherever, and I hear guys up there saying that Trevor almost blew the game. And I almost blew a gasket when I heard that, because how does a guy have his best game and y'all still find something to nitpick about? It's a classic case of going on offense so you won't have to play defense. We see right through that stuff, man. He literally, this makes me understand that folks really don't want to say anything. Some people don't want to say anything good about him. And I don't want to put everybody in the same box, because as I said in segment 1, I never thought he had a Patrick Mahomes or a Aaron Rodgers, not even a Josh Allen type arm, but I thought he had the same arm that a whole bunch of Hall of Famers had, and that's Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, and maybe a little bit stronger than that. I think he has a Joe Burrow. I think he probably has a stronger arm than Joe Burrow. But we mentioned some guys that have a talented missile of an arm that aren't even starters in the league, right? So that itself isn't the thing. The thing is with quarterbacks, do people follow them? There's a leadership trait, and Trevor has it. Does he prepare? Does he care? Does he manage himself and carry himself the way someone needs to when they are the franchise face of a team? Yes, he does. Do coaches like him? Is he coachable? Yes. Can he make every single throw? Yes. Does he continue to make the same mistakes over and over again? No, he does not. Has he improved and gotten better? A little, but he was already pretty good when he got into the league. Folks are quick to want to blame coaches for everything, but won't give him a mulligan for his rookie year when he had the worst coach maybe in the history of the National Football League in Urban Meyer. When it comes to him, though, how many times we're going to mention that? You can't just wipe that history away. It happened. Urban was his coach, and it was an absolute disaster and dumpster fire here, and everybody knows it, especially the local people. We know what that kid went through. For us, he was basically a rookie in his second season, and they went to the playoffs with those stats that I just showed you. And when you bring those stats up, folks say, well, it's not just about the stats, it's what we see. But then when they talk about 2023, because the stats aren't that great, they want to point right to the stats as soon as they start talking about Trevor Lawrence. And more importantly, they point to the stats when they talk about C.J. Stroud. Now, is C.J. Stroud a very good quarterback? Yes. Was I right about him in the draft process? Yes. I saw it, right? So it's not out of the realm of possibility that this kid that's thrown for over 304 yards. 304 yards is the smallest amount of yards he's thrown for over the last 4 weeks. He's thrown for as much as 370. But he also had a 3-interception game against the Cardinals a week before they played Jacksonville, when he threw for 336 yards and three interceptions. Okay? He has 5 picks and 19 touchdowns. Last year, Trevor Lawrence had 25 touchdowns and 8 picks. So the thing is, when you keep comparing them, you say, well, this dude's in his first year, Trevor's in his third, which is more like his second year, right? Yeah, so that's where I'm going with it, man. I'm just gonna pop right here, sit down right here, and I'm gonna let you know that I think the young man's getting a little bit of a bad rap. Unlike Trevor, he redshirted. He's 22 years old. he is a really, really good player, but they're weaponizing him, in my opinion, for their argument, and they're using him against Trevor Lawrence. So now it's like, if you say anything bad about CJ Stroud, that's sacrilegious because he's a good kid. He ain't got nothing to do with this. No, it's them that keep putting that kid in this. Yeah, is it going to be CJ Stroud versus Trevor Lawrence for the next foreseeable future? Of course it is. But the fact that they think he's so great, and then they use that statement like, oh yeah, CJ Stroud's the best quarterback in the AFC South. Well, if it was head and shoulders that much better than Trevor Lawrence, you wouldn't have to say that. You wouldn't have to say it. You wouldn't have to, it's like they're trying to sell themselves or repeat it just so they could get under the skin of Jaguar fans. I think CJ Stroud is great. I think Trevor Lawrence is great. I think it's great for football, and it's great for, the NFL that you're going to have those two guys dueling it out for the next decade or so. And I'm not going to try to sit here and change anybody's mind that believes that believes it the other way. But it doesn't mean that Trevor's not good. And me saying that I think Trevor's better because I think he's a little bit more advanced doesn't mean that I can't look and see what that kid can do. And he did play well the other day, but Trevor played well too, and maybe played his best game. And I even said this. Oh, so Trevor took it personal and said, y'all want to have a skills contest, because Trevor was throwing that thing and zipping that thing off both feet while running, putting it in tight spaces, leading his receiver. There was that game the other day should have left room for no one to criticize Trevor Lawrence about anything, but they did. So no, it's not CJ Stroud's fault. I saw him and Trevor shaking hands at the end of the game and had nice words for each other, and they're competitors. Did anybody see the game where CJ Stroud went head to head with Bryce Young and Bryce Young's Carolina Panthers? The only game they won this year was against them, and he had like 140 yards passing. One game doesn't make an argument against a player. Just like one good game from Trevor Lawrence wasn't going to change everybody's mind, but it still irks me and it gets under my skin that both things can't be true to certain people, that they're both good. All you hear is CJ Stroud is great and Trevor Lawrence is overrated. And when you hear that stuff, especially after a game where they went head to head and Trevor won, and Trevor played extremely well, and he showed you all of his skill set, they didn't even give him any credit for the fact that y'all have been saying that stuff, and then he pops out there and in Houston on the road and says, okay, that's your man. All right, let's go. And he showed himself to be what everybody in Jacksonville thinks he is, and still they didn't want to go, they didn't want to lament. They didn't want to ease up. They didn't want to sit here and give the guy. And it's for that reason I know when someone's hating and when it's just their opinion and an observation. Because when he played well the other day, there were people that said, okay, yeah, he did real well. But there are other folks that want to stand on the business of whatever they said before, and they don't want to change their mind because, in the society we live in, you can't admit that you're right or wrong when you wanted to be right so bad. So I think that has a lot to do with it. At the end of the day, it does not matter, Jaguar fans, because guess what? They are 8-3. They are headed towards the playoffs. They're probably going to be, if not the number one seed, they will be hosting a playoff game. And now you got Houston fans saying, well, we just need to get the wild card so we can get back to Jacksonville. If he's not that good, then why y'all so intent on wanting to try to beat him? Like when you want to try to whoop somebody that you're better than, and you know you're better, you don't think about him. So I'm going to end it with that. I want y'all to see la. You know what that means? Think on that, all of you haters. All right, Locked On has launched its first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for your 24/7 covering the top sports stories around the league and of the day with local sports experts. Locked On plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. You guys take care of each other. We will see you on another edition here of Locked On Jaguars. Take care of each other, please. Stop all the hating on Trevor Lawrence.